Alright, hey, teacher Mr. Loria, lecture 2 on Siddhartha, Herman Hesse. Today we're going to cover knowledge, right? Asceticism, circle versus a spiral, Buddha, quiver of words, and who must choose, who must reject. Follows kind of continues Siddhartha's transformation into an individual, into an adult. There's a painting called The School of Athens. It's by Raphael, the Ninja Turtle. The Renaissance artist. And in it, beautiful painting. Look it up if you don't know it. You've probably seen it, right? You've got all these thinkers, everyone's with their own little things. Right in the foreground, or right in the center of the painting, you have Plato, who's pointing up, right? He's depicted as older, next to Aristotle, the younger man, who's pointing down. And the question that they're kind of talking about, or debating, is how do you gain knowledge? Do you gain it through, as Plato was saying, this contemplation of God and of kind of abstract ideals, or as Aristotle seems to imply, through experience of the world, right? And honestly, Siddhartha's transformation in these two chapters, he goes away from the gods towards experience of the earth. But let's see how he does that. He does that with two very distinct religious experiences. One, the chapter among the samanas. This is when he has devoted himself to the life of the samanas. He spends a couple years in that, religious kind of group. We talked about what it is, this extreme suffering for the sake of your soul. We talked about we haven't really talked about this, but the goal is to kill the ego, right? It is to let the ego perish, to be I no longer, to find peace with an empty heart, and to await the miraculous with thoughts free of self. So in our very, follow me on Instagram kind of world that we live in, this seems a little bit odd that the point of this goal is to kill your ego, yourself, your desire to be different. Again, that's done through starvation, through kind of, different meditative practices. Siddhartha starts to doubt this, and on page 15 he's saying, he says to Govinda at one point when they go off to beg together, in some bar in a street full of whores, my friend, I might have learned these things. And Govinda's like, whoa, you're not supposed to be talking like that. You can see Siddhartha's doubt. On 17 he talks about, always I have thirsted for knowledge, always been filled with questions. Right, so he's starting to imply, listen, I still have these questions, I still have this knowledge, these aren't going anywhere. That's when Govinda talks about, we're not walking in a circle, we're ascending. The circle is a spiral, and we already climbed many of its steps. So Siddhartha's kind of just saying, listen, we repeat something, we get nowhere. We repeat it, go nowhere. We repeat it, go nowhere. Govinda has more of a positive view. He says that these things are getting better and better. So just an interesting image to kind of consider. Siddhartha also kind of starts to articulate his belief that, this I believe, no such thing as what we call learning. There is, my friend, only knowing, and this is everywhere, right? I'm beginning to believe that knowing has no worse enemy than the desire to know than learning itself. He's starting to say, I don't trust teachers, I don't trust learning. Meanwhile, right, they receive word that Buddha has, this guy is out there named Buddha. He has this new message, or Gautama, as this translation calls him. He has this message, it's about peace and love and harmony, blah, 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 right? It's interesting to see how this message is framed. It says, in a new spring bubbling up, right? Consoling and mild, full of noble promises. One of the reasons this message is being so well received, perhaps, is because, quote, the world, after all, was diseased, life difficult to bear. And lo, here was a new spring bubbling up, right? So it's like the world is sick, the world is diseased, here is this message of hope. So Govinda's like, hey, have you heard about this? Maybe we should go follow it. Siddhartha's like, let's do it. So Govinda brings it up, like, hey, I was kind of thinking. Siddhartha's like, let's go, come on, right? Has this meditative stare down versus the grand samana at the end. Govinda's like, oh my gosh, and he's like, I don't even care, I don't care about those kind of tricks. So off they go to go see Buddha, who they say glows, he has this peace about him. On page 26 it says, this Buddha was genuine down to the gestures of his littlest finger. This man was holy. Never had Siddhartha reviewed a man like this. Never had he loved a man as much as he loved this one. A couple things to point out. One, Siddhartha, this book is not about Buddha, the character, I think the historical character, who was also named Siddhartha. It might have been easier if Hesse had called this book like Jim, just so there was no confusion, but he didn't. So just keep that in mind. This Siddhartha is not Buddha. It's not the historical Buddha. But two, this is an interesting point. So what is to say about Siddhartha's capacity to love? Here is this man who he sees and he recognizes, okay, you glow peace and all that. But he says he loves him more than he'd ever loved any other man. More than his father, more than his best friend he's been working with for years. And this guy say, like, well, what kind of love is this? He almost admires, like, okay, well, this Buddha has achieved something. This Buddha is revered, like, I love that about him. But to say that that's, love, it makes you you should start to wonder, is Siddhartha capable of loving? And what is love? And we'll keep exploring that question. Much to the same point. They listen to the message. Sounds all great. Sounds beautiful. Govinda's like, I'm going to go. You're coming, right? And he's like, no, right? Go ahead. Go follow this message. And Govinda weeps. At this moment, Govinda realized his friend had left him and he began to weep. Siddhartha, he cried out mournfully. Siddhartha is unaffected. Right? He's like, you're a monk now. You're not supposed to have worldly attachments. Good luck. Leaves him. So Siddhartha doesn't weep. So again, what kind of friend is Siddhartha? What's his ability to love? You then have this passage where Siddhartha meets Buddha. They bump into each other on the trail. And he's like, hey, listen, before I go and do my thing, Siddhartha says to Buddha, I just want to ask you a couple things about your doctrine. And he goes in this long, kind of critique of Buddhism, says, you talk about, and he finds logical flaws within the religion, essentially. Buddha says, beware, this quiver of words, we're getting caught in a thicket of words. We're not really, you got to be careful in these situations. He also tells Siddhartha something pretty interesting. He says, beware of too much cleverness. He's like, you're almost too clever. And this is an idea, right? That your virtues are also your biggest weaknesses. It's something to keep in mind, right? But he's like, you're almost too clever. You gotta watch yourself. Anyway, at that point on page 31, Siddhartha says, listen, thank you, right? What you achieved on your own. I have to go achieve that myself, right? For myself and myself alone must I judge, must I choose, must I reject, right? And so think about too, you were just in a religion, you were brought up to be a Brahmin, right? You say no to that. For a couple years you are, a samana, where you are like killing the self, right? Then you hear about Buddhism too, this kind of third religious wave, or this third idea. To each one you're like, you know what, no with teachings, no to religion, no to God, no to learning about this stuff. I have to go experience now my own life. And so at this point Siddhartha does kind of make that decision and start marching that way. So he moves away from religion over the course of these two chapters. He moves away from his best friend. Like, this is Siddhartha's about to step out on his own. And the next chapter, coincidentally, is called Awakening, right? So he awakens to this, he loves it. Stay tuned. Next time, we are talking about sex, okay? Woo! Finally, something interesting. Anyway, questions, concerns, comments, thoughts on life, let me know. We've seen a lot of Siddhartha. Let's keep learning about him. And, andale pues.